First of all, this is me. And I think you should have some background knowledge about me because I'm a designer and a design researcher, so I'm not a medical doctor. And also, I'm a lecturer at the Lucerne University of Applied Sciences in the degree program Digital Ideation. It's a new program where we combine computer science and design. So, as you're my audience, you are already challenged. This first challenge is, I have to say, I want you to stay with me during the next 5 slides, because the next 5 slides are actually going to be a bit boring. But I had to do this, or I felt I have to do this, because when I talked to people from India about my research project and I mentioned ADHD, the reaction was kind of reluctant, and I was wondering what's going on. And so I was told, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I was told that ADHD is perceived differently here than it is perceived in Switzerland or in the German-speaking context like Germany and Austria. So I was told that in the past years in India, ADHD was regarded as a, let's put it maybe diplomatic, a good thing. So parents were actually keen on that their child was being diagnosed with ADHD, because being diagnosed with ADHD meant that the child was special, and special in the terms of intellectually gifted. So, to understand how we look at it in Switzerland, it's completely different. Being diagnosed with ADHD is rather devastating, because it means you're special, but in a way special like you're not normal. And so it has a huge rise. The term became omnipresent. Everyone got scared that his or her child might be diagnosed with ADHD, and so it was big in the media. And you know, I don't know if the information I got is correct, but that's about it. So let's continue with the next information. Yeah, of course, it's short, but I guess everyone is familiar with the term. One more important fact: it is, in fact, the most common psychiatric disorder in children and in adolescents. And I want to emphasize on the word disorder because it's not a disease. And one more thing, though symptoms might be similar, ADHD is not autism and it has nothing to do with it. So, this being said, what are the symptoms of ADHD? As it's said in the title, it is inattention. It also is hyperactivity and impulsiveness. Those are the most common symptoms. However, there is also, oh, I'm sorry, I just jumped to the next slide, but I just wanted to say ADS comes with the same symptoms, but of course without hyperactivity. Another important point to understand our research project is how ADHD is diagnosed, at least in Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. First of all, it can only be done by a trained physician. So you have to be a medical doctor to give the diagnosis. It can be someone who's, let's say, the teacher and has the feeling that the student might have ADHD. And secondly, it is only given if the symptoms are distinct, as we've seen in the earlier slide, and if they persist for a longer period of time. So you can't just observe them once and expect it is ADHD. By the way, 60% done. Almost done with this boring stuff. Okay. Common treatments of ADHD. Education and counseling. And this involves the person affected as well as the person, the parents, brothers, sisters, the family, everyone that has to deal with the symptoms in one or another way. Another treatment is parent training, so helping parents how to cope with the, let's say, special behavior of the child. How can they be more, I'm missing the words, patient, that's it. How can they be more patient? How do they have to talk to their child? How can they explain actually what the child is experiencing? Another treatment is behavior therapy, so learning how to interact with the symptoms of the disorder. And then in some cases also psychotherapy could be helpful, but this only if anxiety or depression occur parallel to the common symptoms of ADHD. And also it is very helpful if you do any physical activities. And the last one, and this is probably why ADHD is also so famous, it's drugs. And you are certainly familiar with it. It's called Ritalin. That's the one that is in the media a lot because it's a stimulant, and so it changes how your brain works. And there are side effects, and yeah, you can look at it from different perspectives. I won't go into detail here because this is not about my research project. Congratulations, you made it through these 5 slides, and now I am sure that we're all on the same page. That was my goal. Well, I decided to challenge you again. I have a second challenge for you. I need you to understand how research projects in Switzerland work. There are different kinds of, but since I'm affiliated with a university for applied sciences, which is called Hochschule Luzern, it is a pre-given rule how it works, and I'll show you how. There is a Commission for Technology and Innovation, it's CTI, and this is the commission that funds you. So, in order to get funding, you have to write a research proposal, and they have to accept it. But that's not the only thing what you have to accomplish. The other thing you have to accomplish is you need a business partner. That is, you can't go without a business partner because they say you're a university for applied sciences, so we want to see where your research can be applied. We had all this, so we found a business partner. It was the psychiatric clinic of Lucerne, and we had the funding, but suddenly the clinic didn't want to join us anymore, which was a big problem because then we didn't follow the rules anymore, and we didn't actually know if we could continue with the research project. I tell you why the clinic or our business partner didn't want to continue working with us. And I also explain you, luckily, the CTI was convinced of our research proposal, and so I think we are the only research project in Switzerland, and I also think the first one in Switzerland, that got the allowance to not follow the rules and do the research without the business partner. This is why our business partner had doubts of what we are going to do. They heard, well, I admit we probably made a mistake in our research proposal. We called the research project Neuro App. And then they heard the word app. And with this term, they got scared. They thought they're not doing valid scientific research. They will just design another app. And also, they thought it will be an app that covers topics like mindfulness and self-improvement and stuff like that. So they thought it's not medical, and because of that, they thought it's not professional, and so they didn't want to work with us anymore. But I can assure you, it was never our goal to guide or program a new app. Another reason they were scared, you are all familiar with these headsets which pretend to read your mind. They thought we are going to use them because also with the proposal there was the term gamification. And gamification and gaming and the headsets make them think, oh my god, they want to do stuff like this. No, we didn't have this in mind, but you see, you have to be very careful with your wording. And I guess you are all familiar with those equipment, and they might work for gaming, but in a medical setting they actually do not. So, everyone still with me? Thank you, because you just made it through the second part. It's going on like this. I won't lose you on the way. So, challenge number 3. We're in the process that you get familiar with our research project, so I need you to understand our assets. I need you to understand how we formulated the problem and why we formulated it this way. And I also need you to understand what strategy we chose to go with. So, now I introduce you to what we are actually doing. It is called neurological feedback therapy, and as you can see, it's a children's drawing and it shows perfectly what it does. So you have a medical device, and in front you have a screen, and you have lots of sensors that are put on the children's head, and the child is being asked to pay attention what happens on the screen. And if the child is attentive, there is direct feedback on the screen. So he or she sees, in a way, what he or she is thinking. In real life, this looks like this. You have a computer and you have this medical device which is connected to all the sensors. What we also did is we looked at the screens. So what is already available? How can you, what is the visual feedback you get when you train in this sector? And there are different kinds, and yeah, there are even more, you will see them later. So let's continue, because what I wanted to get to is we actually tried it ourselves. We wanted to know how it feels like to be in this setting. So there you can see a therapist, there you can see my boss and also my research partner and the setting. And I hope you can also see this is a movie that is shown. And if your attention goes down from the outside, a black surface dream. So then you realize, I can't see the movie anymore. And then you realize, oh, maybe I'm not attentive anymore. You get back to watching the movie and it lightens up again. And with doing this back and forth all the time, you actually learn how you can train your mind to be attentive. But it's quite hard. So children actually do better than adults. Though there are problems. Otherwise we wouldn't have a research problem or research topic. And I want to elaborate on them. It is effective, it has been proven scientifically that it works, but it is not well established. And there are many reasons why this is the case. We could say it's because the pharmaceutical industry has an interest that no one knows about it, so only the people know about it. Also, it is, as you might can imagine, the training equipment is sensitive, therefore it is expensive. Not many therapists have the equipment. And if they have it, it is not or rarely available for domestic training. But we do have data that the training is much more efficient if it works in a pattern like the child meets the therapist, he or she trains at home, then there's a meeting with the therapist, and the training at home continues. And this should be obtained for about 6 months at least. Now, as you can see, it's rarely available, and even if children fail during the domestic training. And again, here we have a couple of reasons why this doesn't work. And just to give you numbers, I'm not aware if you know how tiny Switzerland is, but we're about 8 million people. It is, we think that there are about 4 to 5% of children that are being diagnosed with ADHD. That comes to about 60 to 70,000 children in Switzerland, which is quite a bit. If you hear the following number, there are only 2 therapists in Switzerland, to our knowledge, but I think we covered them all, that give away the training equipment for the domestic training. However, they also brought up the data of the children that fail with the domestic training. So we, as designers, are super interested, of course, why does this not work? So is it the motivation? Is it because you can explain rationally to a child that he or she has to continue with training and with time the symptoms will decrease? Or is it just because the content does not fit the user? So because of these different approaches, we decided we need a human-centered strategy or methodology to solve the current problem. And that means that, well, let me introduce you. This is Peter. That we have to look at the child. And each child is different, so we have to look at different children. Now we have to look how is the service design done so far. And service design includes how should the communication between people involved be organized. Also, user-centered design. So, the information material. There's a lot out there, believe me, but to whom is it, or for whom is it designed? Who does it address? So is it for the child? Is it for the therapist? Is it for worried parents? We don't know. And another focus we have is the interaction design. That's what I mentioned earlier. We look at the screens, we look at the software that is available with the medical equipment, and with usability methods we look how do people interact with what they see. Another focus we have is the individualization. So you could say we want to know how can we customize the content on the person. And last but not least, and that's because we're here, we also look at gamification. How can strategies of gamification help us to improve the motivation of the children and other people involved that the domestic training will work? So now let's elaborate on each of these points. That is service design. I don't know how it is in India, but in Switzerland there is not one ADHD information page. There is plenty of stuff on the internet. Everyone who heard about ADHD, Google it. Or English. It can be differently in terms of your child is affected and your family doctor mentions it. Or there's a parent and you get information from your pediatrician. So how are these people connected? Who is the center? To whom should you talk to? There is no rule so far. And we think it would be easier for people to know with whom they can connect. So that's one thing we take a closer look at. The other one, the user-centered design. We met Peter earlier, but there are also his parents. And there is his teacher, and maybe there's the guy who works at the insurance company and has to decide if the treatment is going to be paid or not. All of them want a different kind of information. And the information has to be addressed to the user's needs. Because the therapist, she might be interested in latest research, and the parents would only want to understand what's going on. So we have the interaction design. There's already plenty out there, but we say it's not state of the art, not at all. So we really have to improve what's going on there. Also, not many designers were involved in the development process of this. Yeah, you see, there's lots of potential to do. And then also, we have the client-centered approach. We want to individualize the content. And this is just, how can I say? It's like the most important thing. You can look at Philip. He's 14, he likes fashion, and so on. He's not interested in the content Mary likes, of course. But at the moment, no one cares about it. So at the moment, you have one range of content, and you just hope that this one approach fits all, but it just doesn't. And that's why the children are not motivated in continuing their program or their training at home. And also, you can imagine there are lots of children that just don't feel that what they see helps them to improve the symptoms. Well, also gamification. No one ever thought about it. I mean, in this context. So how can you motivate the children to continue with the training? Should you add levels? Should you add things you can collect? Can you make a multiplayer game? Can you actually create a group and look how other children do? There are no ideas so far, and we look into that more closer to find out what's possible. And also, what we do, we interview the children and ask them, how do you like to play? what is your favorite computer game? And we really, really hope that, as I told you in the beginning, we're at the early stages, but that our research will make a difference. And now, I award you with being my best audience today, and I say thank you. And if you have questions, now is the time. My last slide is, I'd love to hear your comments. If you have ideas, just get in touch with me, write me an email, and help improving the situation for the children, because I guess it's not that easy to cope with it. So, thank you so much. Good question. Yes, we do have people that have a medical background that help us with the research. It's actually a couple of therapists that offer the neurofeedback therapy in Switzerland, because they, of course, are interested that the treatment method is becoming more famous in Switzerland. Yes, we do have medical people in our team, but they don't get money for it, so they just do it out of their own interests in it. So,
you have put in a lot of expert and research to come up with all of this. How you are going to take it to the market?
As you have seen the medical equipment I have shown, we are also working with this producer. Right? Again, the producer cannot offer us financial support. So what we have is, we can use the equipment that is already there. We can evaluate how it works, where it has to be improved, and so the producer will benefit from our research. So it's already on the market, and there are more companies that do stuff like this, but this is our partner that gives us the in-depth information.
So you're actually thinking of making a game for these kids, like to help these people who are suffering from this sort of.
Absolutely. So that's like the final, or one of the final steps, that we want to create different kinds of games in a prototyping state to try how does it work, and does it improve the current situation, and apply usability methods and look how respond children on either game. Yes, and then if we see which one might work best, of course we'd love to go into the next stage.
And one more thing, so I'm a student actually, I'm currently pursuing a master's in design.
Yes.
Game design. So we were developing this game in stress management and how to help kids to actually like cope with stress and manage all their schedule and everything.
Yes.
So the difficulty I was facing was like there are people who are different interests and who are like different levels of hyperactivity and stuff like that.
Yes.
So how do you design something which is like which is applicable to like all, like majority of the audience, especially like things like these which is like common in children as well as adolescents. So something which is like you'll be designing one thing, right? You won't be going ahead and personalizing it for every single individual.
But we would define kind of things. We would try to figure out what are the most understanding needs within the ADHD. Of course, we can customize the content to do one individual, but we can at least look at the interest of
This is definitely not fun. It can be different for different people. definition of fun can be different for different people. And at the same time, our objective is not only for them to enjoy it, but actually for them to learn them, like make them learn something in some way, and make them actually incorporate it within, like whatever we are trying to give out. So there's a constraint that sometimes whether to concentrate on the fun part or whether to actually how do you make sure like they are actually learning and not forgetting, like just have the fun and then.
Well, we don't look only at time. We also look at how can we actually put relevant content into the game. So let's say they're in sixth grade. So what's going on in the curriculum in sixth grade? Could it be a possibility to put biology stuff in one of those games so they have the opportunity to train and learn at the same time? Yes, please. I'm not sure if I can answer this question. For this, probably it would be better to really talk to a medical doctor. We only realize that if your mind wanders away in darkness, you never tried it with like subtitles or stuff like this. And I mean, if you're not able to try it because it's not English so far. No, we're still in the prototyping phase. The medical device is already on the market, so we realize that we have that effect, and we would like to use this.
For any kind of therapy, and it needs to go through clinical trials. You need to have a large group before it actually comes out in the market. So do you have plans of doing something like that, or I'm just trying to understand.
It's in Switzerland, right? Probably right. And what's the data looking like if you look globally, actually, especially in the Western countries also? Because obviously there's a little ease of the fund over there. You have VCs and all that, right? So if it's like this widespread, and I'm sure because with this smartphones and everything coming up, even the adults' attention span is coming down, right? You're doing tons of stuff at the same time. So looking into the global data, do you think that even connecting across the globe with where all the research is going on, what's going on in the device market itself, who all is working on it, will it be helpful to you? ADHD.
Thank you. But it is the prevalence is twice often in boys than in girls. So, and for that there is no explanation so far. We don't know this, and this is not a research interest of ours. This, of course, is a research interest of medical people.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where maybe, there is maybe large stuff happening around the globe, because looks like it's a much larger problem to be looked into and solved.
Yes. So, does anyone inside here have experience on how it looks like in India? Because as you heard in the beginning, I started my talk with what I heard, what people perceive about ADHD. Is this perception wrong, or what do you think about it?
So maybe what I've heard in India is more about hyperactive childs. Maybe, the medical science itself doesn't call it as an attention deficit, but more like, hyperactive. So you keep moving from one task to the other task and you keep doing a bunch of stuff. But in other way, yes, your attention span is kind of less actually in terms of others. So I think, it's happening in India, and then you have many times when you, even I've seen, even in my neighbor's kid, even, one of my, earlier, like my elder daughter used to have this, and then we started doing a little bit of, yoga and then physical sports more on that, and then she improved. But she used to be like super hyperactive, and we were not able to kind of stop it also, because whatever she does, she will go and get the prize actually. So it becomes like pretty hard to say that why you are doing 5 things instead of doing 2 things, because she's just getting everywhere and getting the things done. But that's another form of being hyperactive, and if you want to kind of save the energy and then focus on some stuff, then maybe
And
so
do you
nobody
actually have
told us
parent
like
training?
attention deficit, but it's what there's a little bit of hyperactive, and then you can do this and do that. So maybe the medical practitioner itself doesn't call it as a attention deficit as of now.
Kids who are actually one of the symptoms is being impulsive. So when we are actually playing game, we sort of tend to become impulsive. Like when I'm actually making decisions generally, I would think twice. But when I'm into game, I see a game, the moment I see it, I want to start playing it. So wouldn't it add on to my impulsiveness in some way? Like, is it the right thing to actually think of making a game as a part of treatment for this?
I totally think it is a right thing to make a game, because as you've seen in the other treatments methods, you also can do behavioral training. So, which means you also get aware of your impulsiveness. And doing one thing and the other thing doesn't, it just helps you to become more aware of yourself.
Have you thought of any elements in what way it can be different from the already existing games, so that it actually helps them in a certain way, at the same time not making them realize that they're actually being treated?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we're looking at this human-centered strategy, and the existing systems, they neglected the human-centered approach, because they didn't look at what content children want to see or what they actually want to interact with. They didn't look at gamification. They didn't look at how the information is addressed or designed, and which person you could address if you have questions. So who is your main contact? So in terms of this, our solution, our proposed solution will certainly be different from the existing systems, yes. I didn't understand you, I'm sorry.
Do you think any existing game can be used as a solution instead of creating a new
addiction game?
existing game?
An existing game.
Yeah.
Why not? Yes, if there is a game that has already shown that it helps children to engage with something for a longer period of time, where they actually are attentive. Why not? Yes.
You're not sure whether it's actually helpful when you are out of the game world, like, and the attention span is the same, like the level of attention.
Well, this is when the neurofeedback therapy kicks in, because you train how your mind works. And when you are actually attentive throughout a game for a long period of time, you already accomplished that you are able to be attentive. Someone that is diagnosed with ADHD is not able to do this for a longer period of time. So then there is no need in continue the training anymore. In other words, the person has no more symptoms. Yes. Well, that actually addresses the problem of the definition of ADHD. So you still can be diagnosed with ADHD, but you don't show the symptoms anymore. But this is also based on how you improve through training, and how you are able to use the new mechanisms you learned in all-day life. So you have to get the awareness to realize when your attention goes down. And when this happens, you kind of have to activate the new knowledge and try to focus again. There are existing games, but you don't have the feedback yet. So, and I mean, if the games, again, if the children engage with the game for a long time, they don't have the symptom of ADHD.
So does it give a certain level of feedback once you're done playing the game, to actually let a player know, like, okay, or like this is what, or like how much you were attentive or something like that, so that they know whether like this level of attention is like...
No, there is not like a system that shows, or a table that shows he or she can be attentive for more than 10 minutes, so he or she is fine. It is really an individual decision between the therapist and the child or its parents. Yes. Ah.
This is just something for my knowledge. Is it possible that a student, when a person who is diagnosed with this disorder shows different symptoms when they are with the gaming scenario and when you are trying to make them learn through other methodologies? Is it possible that they respond differently? That when they are actually in the gaming scenario, their attention span is good, they're enjoying, but when you take them offline and try other methodologies with them, their attention span is very less?
Yeah, we haven't tried this yet, but my assumption will be yes, of course, because it's as if happens to all of us. If we engage with something we are interested in, we forget about time and we're in the state of flow.
Okay. So you need more study to understand.
Absolutely.
This. Yeah.
We need a lot of time and resources to study this.
So you can't, in this case, you can't follow a normal procedure of game development because you can't start from a mechanic or a character. You have an idea, you have to treat something, right? So if you can't follow the normal process, you must have some criterias. Like it can't vary too much. It cannot give a player so many options at the same time. So how much criteria have you figured out yet?
We didn't figure out criteria yet. We're at the moment in the stage that we interview children, that we also interview therapists. And we ask them, what would you like to have in a game? What kinds of games do you like to play? What are the topics you're interested in? And this is how we will figure out what criteria we will define to go on to the next step then.
And have you made a plan of your entire process, like how you would proceed after you gather your data and after you get your criteria, how the process will take place? Because it cannot follow a normal process because it will keep on changing as new data surfaces.
Well, it exists as an idea, yes, but this is actually for the second research project. So it means for this we have to write a second proposal and hope that we will get funding. For the first stage, it will be only a prototype where we try a couple of things and then where we try how they work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Manuela. I think